Welcome to this media briefing, which I'm holding with colleagues from the board. First, introductions. My name is Lewanika. I am the board chairperson for Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition. On my right is Mr. Douglas Tigere, who is the board member representing the youth committee. I have Mr. Tabani Moyo, who is representing the Information Committee on the board for Crisis Coalition, but is also from the Media Institute of Africa, MISA. Then Mr. Veleminyama, who is representing the Advocacy Committee on the board. So we have before you 4 board members from Crisis Coalition to present this statement to the media with a view to clarify and shed light into a very difficult situation that we find ourselves in. But broadly, I wish to highlight that civil society in Zimbabwe has a role to play in building democratic institutions. We have a role to lead by example in good governance, transparency and accountability. Zimbabwe is steeped in a crisis of governance and leadership, characterized by weak institutions that are swayed by personality cults and protracted succession challenges. The chaos in ZANU-PF in the lead up to its Congress next month is reflective of how democracy is in the intensive care unit in Zimbabwe when our doctors are on strike. Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition, whose vision is to see a democratic Zimbabwe, believes civil society has a critical role to play in nurturing and sustaining a culture of respect for principles and values of good governance, openness, accountability within the Zimbabwean society. Zimbabwe's development that will improve the lives of ordinary people and boost international confidence and investment is anchored on pillars of strong democratic institutions. It is necessary to invest in strong democratic institutions, not in strong individuals or dominant individuals, in order to sustainably fight the struggles of ordinary Zimbabweans. To be effective in holding government and other public or private institutions accountable, we must be strong actors and staunch defenders of the values we subscribe to. Recalling that a duly constituted Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition board legitimately met on October 10, 2014 and decided not to renew the director's employment contract based on, among other things, an adverse 2013 external audit report that the board reviewed, and regrettably noting the continued defiance and resistance by the affected employee, Mr. McDonald Lewanika, working in cahoots with the spokesperson, Mr. Mfundo Mlilo, to issue contrary statements to cause chaos and confusion. We state as follows. 1. The Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition board decision not to renew the director's employment contract stands as made on 10 October 2014. The illegal so-called special general meeting improperly called by the Secretariat for the purpose of reversing the board decision on one employee is null and void and will not take place under current conditions, where there is no harmonization among membership and where the outgoing director is driving chaos to address a personal employment contract issue. All Crisis Coalition members were duly notified that the board did not authorize the unsigned anonymous notice for the special general meeting, and that should such a meeting be required, proper procedures will be followed to convene the meeting. The board will not attend the bogus meeting, but will continue to defend the legitimate interests of the coalition and ensure that civil society does not set precedents wherein disgruntled employees disregard governance structures and resort to political shenanigans to evade accountability. As civil society, we are a national force whose positive values and systems of governance must be above reproach if they are to be reflected at national level. This is why we refuse to be bullied or blackmailed and remain committed, standing on principle, to insist that we must adhere to our own principles and internal values of transparency and accountability. As a leadership, we will not stand aside and let a manifestly corrupt cabal destroy the people's movement for the sake of their individual stomachs. For us to sustain the cause of democracy, we must refrain from adopting and perfecting ZANU-PF-style non-democratic methods of retaining positions, as this makes us no different from those we so often criticize. Our relevance as civil society and our role in building strong democratic institutions is defined by our capacity and commitment to demonstrate leadership of conviction and not convenience. The moment we abandon our core values of accountability and good governance is the moment our relevance comes into serious question. We urge Crisis Zimbabwe Coalition members not to attend the meeting called by Lewanika and Mlilo on the 17th of November 2014 at Wild Geese Lodge, as doing so would be to give legitimacy to a bogus process that has no legal force or effect. Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition is a strictly non-partisan and independent civil society platform for the coordination, convening, and amplification of voices of civil society organizations concerned with good governance, democracy, and human rights issues. Its vision is a democratic Zimbabwe. I thank you. I will now call upon questions from the media. To ask you to identify yourself, where you're coming from, and your question, and then my colleagues will join me in responding to the issues that you raise. Thank you. We'll take a round of 3 questions. Yes.
Okay, if you may educate us with respect to how contracts at Crisis are terminated and the powers of the Secretariat vis-a-vis that of the board, and why the Secretariat would want to, as you put it, subvert the position of the board. I mean, what is the contractual position with respect to the termination of employment of the director? How does this board come in, and when does the Secretariat come in?
Thank you. I'll take a round of 3 questions, then we'll respond. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. You have talked about the 2013, my name is Pasere. You have talked about the 2013 audit report. Can you give us snippets of the issues that the board has got reservations about? Because we have seen a story before, I think it was in the Herald, also alluding to the fact that the board has reservations about that audit report. But no details were given to that story. So I think it would benefit a lot members of the public as well as the media.
Okay, thank you. One more question, then we'll respond. But yes, yes.
The board is, as I understand, made up of 10 members, and there are 4 of you there. Would you probably want to enlighten us on how many of the board subscribe to your position and how many are in support of the Secretary? And maybe just to add on to what we said, to what extent does the Secretary have power to convene a board meeting?
Thank you. I will respond to some of the issues, then my colleagues will respond as they see fit. In terms of the issue of contracts, without going into the details and specifics, broadly, the board has power vested in itself fully to deal with issues of contracts of all employees, including and beginning with the director of the organization. However, this power may be delegated with regards to the more junior employees, but not with regards to the director's position. and how contracts are terminated, again in terms of the broad principles, when you look at fixed term employment contracts, the principle is that renewal or otherwise there is no need to notify the employee in person, but being a democratic institution that is open and transparent, we went further than the call of legality and duty to clarify the issues that were behind the motivation and the reservations to renew a contract when it expires at the end of this year. And key to that was the 2013 external audit on which the board had serious reservations, particularly on failure to comply with liability and tax obligations for the country for the whole of 2013, which led to the organization suffering prejudice and a penalty of more than $22,000 US. Now, some might think that this is small money and this should be forgiven, as we have read in the media. But on principle, this is not acceptable, and this was the basis upon which we said, among other things, the board was not satisfied that it would be sending the right message as a watchdog of transparency and accountability with zero tolerance to corruption. We said we could not endorse this kind of negligence, and therefore, by resolution, by majority decision of the board, we decided that we would not endorse this current position, but would move in a different direction that gives full reflection of our core values of transparency and accountability. So these are some of the issues that, that came up in the audit, which amounted to gross failure, and which made the board say we need to stamp our authority and move in a different direction and ensure that we clean up and leave a space and a legacy that ordinary Zimbabweans will be proud to associate with. Unfortunately, we have met serious resistance, and in fact, it might be correct to say that we had underestimated the power of capital to resist and fight back from a small cabal. And in terms of the opposition to this position that we took, it was really the minority that decided within the board of 2 or 3 board members out of 10 who defied the position of the board, refused to abide by democratic principles, and vowed not to accept the outcomes of a legitimate board decision, and said, whatever happens, we must reverse this decision, driven in our view by personal interest. In terms of the board position and where we are in terms of other members, I will give to Tabani, and then I'll cover other issues if there are any that are outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Tabani Moyo. I'm the head of the Information Committee. The Information Committee is the retaining office of the AGM. It runs the AGM when it is properly convened by the authority that is supposed to call for it. That is to say, the convener of the AGM is the chairperson for and on behalf of the board, which the retaining officer is myself, and we are supposed to run the AGM through the mill. That is to say, we issue proper notification, proper documents are accompanied by the notification, and then the AGM is convened. Now, if you want to understand the challenges of the so-called AGM, which is being called by the syndicate, is that for example, you know, it might be legally complicated, but imagine spokesperson, if you want to be practical, spokesperson Rugare Gumbo, for example, in ZANU-PF, calling for the Congress. And within no short space of time, you hear the head of Secretariat Mchena issuing logistics to the Congress. And the convener is not aware that there is a Congress that is supposed to be called for. So these are serious challenges that we are having. Firstly, we have got a political crisis that a minority wants to create a siege picture of the board, a standoff type of a board, whereby there is no unanimity in the issue at hand. They want to remove the power of the board being the employing authority from the board and second it to an AGM. An AGM is now in this situation an equivalent of a rally. You don't employ a director at a rally. The director is not voted for. The core competence is assessed by the employing authority, who is the board. In this case, the board on the 10th of October sat down and decided that given the issues at hand, we can't renew the contract. But the minority, with its attempt to create a siege picture, went on to call for a board meeting through the director and the spokesperson helping him to run riot. This is a creation of soft relationships at Secretariat and the few individuals in the board, of which these soft relationships also include the gray areas which were unearthed by the 2013 report. And as a board, we stand firm by the position that we are the custodian of the organization's documents, resources, structures, and symbols, and everything. And when we have got challenges of this nature, of a director who runs amok together with a spokesperson, we will equally take measures as a board when time is convenient to put to bed the riot. Or in simple terms, when the music stops, the dancing must also stop. And in this situation, the director and the spokesperson continue to dance. So it is our humble position that the issues at hand are hard issues, which cannot be usurped from the board to a general meeting. The board has to manage the complex issues. It's a contractual issue which remains a prerogative of the board to address. And in this case, the board spoke. And these mere acts of resistance, I think it's a matter of time they will go to bed. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take another round of questions and then we'll respond. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm right. Following the media, I understand that there are issues of solidarity partners who are actually going to pay to the secretary. To what extent is this influencing or actually propelling the said intransigence, if I may put it that way, from the secretariat and area department, as you put it?
Okay, thank you. I'll take two more. If none, then we'll respond.
So when was the contract expiring?
At the end of this year, 31 December 2014.
Have you started the process, Chair, of recruiting a new director?
Well, I will respond. The process is beginning in earnest, but why we have convened this meeting and why we are engaging with a key pillar for democracy in terms of defense of democracy, which is the media, is to highlight the challenges that we are facing, resistance to adherence to democratic principles. And this is a basic concept where the use of cash is now primary. So it ceases to be an issue of values, but on who commands the largest bag of cash to determine the outcomes of procedural meetings. And this is the challenge that we face when you talk of the so-called solidarity partners. We do not believe that solidarity partners broadly would tolerate such kinds of values as to tolerate corruption, as to tolerate that kind of negligence of duty or the abuse of their resources to the extent that you can afford to pay a penalty fee to Zimbra of more than $22,000. We don't believe that it is possible. However, there are some junior officers within that framework who are complicit and who are complicating things for civil society. And this is what we want to expose and to call upon solidarity partners to please help defend values and principles and not individuals. We have been advised that solidarity partners will stand by individuals, but we say this is unfortunate because what we believe is that we must stand by values and principles and be guided by such only. Otherwise, we do not become any different from those that we criticize when we look at what this syndicate in Cabal believes to be in fashion, the issue of votes of no confidence. which is really throwing out democratic values and principles, simply to retain political positions, simply to retain access to resources, illegal and or otherwise. But what we're saying is that we need to stand by principles. We have been advised that perhaps it is better for us to retreat, to throw in the towel and let the cabal have its way. But I want to say that we are prepared to go all the way to ensure that we defend these values no matter what. And let it be clear that although we appear soft-spoken, on values we will not be shaken. This is what we want the media and the society to know. That when it comes to defending values, we will not be shaken. We will not move from the principle that accountability begins in the family. Accountability begins with civil society. Otherwise, we lose that high moral ground from which we are supposed to challenge and hold others accountable. And this is the basic principle that is driving and motivating us as we stand here. We do not have resources. We have to borrow and ask for resources to convene these meetings, but we believe in the principle. But there is a small cabal that is controlling and using organizational resources to subvert values and principles for personal gain, and this is unacceptable. And we're saying that we will not move back, we will not retreat, we will ensure that until the last breath, we defend values of accountability and transparency in civil society in Zimbabwe. Thank you. Any other questions?
There is a question that was posed by Chidza about the number of board members which you have not responded to.
Okay, yes, in terms of the number of board members, the decision that was taken by the board, we have 10 board members. The majority of the members, of all the members in the board, took that decision. The minority, which is 3 board members, resisted and vowed to reverse that decision. That is the position that is there. Now, in terms of convening this meeting, because of the chaos that has been sown, and because, mind you, our lives, even our lives, are in danger. A number have retreated and are cautious because what they want now is security of space. But we are saying that for the sake of values, we have to stick out our necks and defend this position and dismiss a bogusly convened meeting for what it's worth. We cannot have employees, disgruntled or otherwise, convening bogus meetings in order to reverse a democratic process. We have a constitutional mandate that we must discharge. Now, what we have here is one employee who is using the muscle of cash to reverse democratic processes and to set a precedent that if you have access to resources and you believe you have friends in high places, then there is no accountability and you are untouchable. And that, we humbly say, is not acceptable. We may not have those kinds of resources, we may not have those kinds of friends in high places, but we stand on principle. Yes?
I'm very sorry that I'm just coming here. I just wanted to make clarity, maybe, from you, chairperson. The fact that
Mashungu, we can't hear you.
the fact that the chairperson of the coalition, and obviously there are other things that we definitely hear maybe through grapevine, and I think also from what you are also saying, there are issues of like high places that you are talking about. To what extent is also the so-called donors, especially those from our American friends and others who seem to be controlling what is happening in the civil society, contributed to the chaos that is happening now? Because I can openly maybe say, when we hear some of these guys who are trying to come up with this bogus meeting, they always say some of these things, even at beer halls, that they were and the so-called friends will not do anything because we control cash from what is happening with the donors. To what extent is it also contributed to some of these issues?
Okay, thank you. I note your question and I'll respond.
Yeah, well, there's a follow-up maybe to the solidarity partner that Mashu is referring to. I want to understand that is there any involvement of political parties, factions, perhaps, that are involved in these issues of political parties that are trying perhaps to, because from what I've been reading in the media is that there is actually a faction of the political party that is actually is interest in politics. So I just want to clarify that, is there any political involvement?
Thank you for those two questions. To clarify, we need, here speaking for the coalition, to absolve the donor community of wrongdoing at this point. But what we know is that there are misconceptions fueled by junior staffers with inflated self-egos who believe that they control the donor community and who go about lying that the donor community condones corruption. We know they do not. But we just want this to be clear, that it is not the policy of the donor community to condone lack of transparency and accountability, but it is the work of individuals, fairly junior individuals, with their hands in the crisis pie, who wish to continue to have that kind of relationship based on individuals and not on the institution. So what we are doing is to defend the institution, and we are saying that we need to separate issues. There are people who are purporting to have all this kind of power. They do not have that kind of power. And this is why we want to expose them for what they are. And this is why we believe that all people in this society who subscribe to values of transparency and accountability and objectivity should not skim and look at the surface, but should engage with the facts. We know that they want to simplify and politicize and take a political angle to these issues. But we urge the media, we urge everyone involved to look at the facts and judge for themselves. Because if we do not engage with the facts, if we take partisan positions, then we will not take civil society forward. So I think that is my response. The same goes to political formations and political parties. We believe that it is just individuals who are pretending to have the weight of their political formations behind them in supporting a particular group. But we also urge them to be objective and to look at the broader and the bigger picture, which is how do we nurture the values of democracy in Zimbabwe? How do we build strong democratic institutions? This is our call and our cause. Thank you. Yes.
I would just like to ask whether, because I see Brother any sort of a board, because you are in a situation where you can't fire your employees despite being the employer. And you're also in a unique situation, which is the first time I've seen it, where your employees have more money than you do. That they can actually present their own getting fired. So how are you going to solve this conundrum? And secondly, the other partners, as I know, crisis is made up of different organizations. What will happen if, for example, they side with the wealth employees who are wealthier than their employers, and decide, for example, to pull out, like what is happening to COSATU, and I've heard reports that some of the organizations within crisis are saying, the organizations within crisis are saying they are going to pull out if they go ahead and fire Mr. Lewanika. How are you going to solve that? Would you rather have a very small crisis coalition, maybe another crisis,
I think that's a good question. Can I have yours and then I'll respond to it too?
Thank you for bringing this to light. But how justified are the accusations that they were having a well-orchestrated plan to unseat the current director and replace him with the only preferred director, and that all these accusations of the 23,000 missing money are just a pretext?
Thank you. I will respond to those two issues and I will ask colleagues if they need to respond as well. On the issue of crisis and members, partners taking positions, I think we cannot prevent people from taking partisan positions. I think that's clear. Our duty is to clarify, is to lay issues on the table and make it clear that these are the issues that they must deal with. And therefore, even if I am to be the only one remaining standing on this position, and I believe, guided by my conscience, that this is the correct position in terms of the principles of transparency and accountability, so be it. But if people choose that we will not look at these issues, we will sweep them under the carpet, this is what we have decided, so be it. But we have a duty to expose and lay on the table all the issues for people who are objective to make up their minds. And in terms of the allegations that you have raised, yes, there are those allegations. What I wish to place on record is that we are not talking of an audit report that I authored as the chair, 10 members, commissioned an audit report for 2013, which audit reported its findings that are on paper, that the board had to engage with, which audit report disclosed a number of issues, some of which we have been aware of, which we had to act on, including failure by the organization, led by the director, to pay taxes for the whole year except for the month of May, leading to the penalty of more than $22,000. Now, this is not hearsay. These are factual things that we can present that are available. So we are not dealing with personal issues. This is why we are insisting that people should engage with the facts. But where we now have personal issues coming in is precisely where my other colleague has said, that people are simply saying, now we want to defend this employee not to be fired, notwithstanding the facts on the table, notwithstanding the values of the institution. So what we are saying is that we have degenerated as a society to a point where we are simply saying what is important are personal relations or personal issues or personal benefits and not the values that guide us. And this is why we are saying that if we have a coalition of 83 members or 90 members, what must bind us together are values, not personalities. Organizations are not run on the basis of individuals. We must move away from personality cults. We must move away from believing that if one person is not there, there is no organization. If I am not the board chairperson today or tomorrow, it does not mean that the organization must fall. It must continue to subscribe and to live, because individuals who make up that organization are bound together by values. And we must have those values respected and protected. And this is what we want. And if people begin to feel that they now have a different set of values, then we cannot stand in their way. But if we are bound together by values of accountability, of transparency, of zero tolerance to corruption, then we must defend those values, no matter who is implicated and no matter who is on the wrong side of the law. And this is what we want to do. And we are saying why we are taking all these measures to engage, to try and to talk and reach out, to consult the elders of the coalition, is primarily because we need to preserve and first of all defend the institution. There is no monopoly for political shenanigans. There is no monopoly for scheming and for mobilizing. But we believe we must be professional. We believe we must move away from those things to defend the values of the institution. This is why we are reaching out. This is why we are engaging a key pillar of democracy. And this is why we are putting out this message to say, colleagues, contrary to what you may have heard, these are the issues on the table that we need to deal with and that we cannot run away from, and that in all good conscience we cannot sweep under the carpet. We cannot live with these things and move on and pretend that everything is business as usual. It is not. We need to confront these issues and deal with them, and so help us God prevail and lead the organization to a new dispensation. But colleagues, if you wish to respond,
Political end.
Sorry?
Can you respond to the question that quite raised about the political head or the factional heads?
Oh, okay. Yes, we will not speculate. We are dealing with facts. So what we are presenting is what we have proven. So we will not speculate on the existence or otherwise of political ends behind these things. We want to believe that these institutions are institutions of integrity that will not be driven by personal interests, but that will be guided by values, particularly those that belong to the pro-democracy platform. So we want to believe that if there are any individuals who happen to belong to those political formations, they are doing that, if whatever they are doing, in their personal capacities and not with the weight of institutions behind them. This is what we believe, and we are dealing here with facts and not speculation. So we will not speculate, we will deal with what we have proven and what we can deal with. Thank you.
But just to add to the complex layer of the managed employer and the failure, the managed employed and the failure to, well, we said the decision of the board is that as of the 31st of December, the contract is not renewed. And it stands. We can't say we have failed to make that decision. That decision has been made. What are the consequences of that decision, however, is this land mining of the path to that December 31 date. But we have insisted on the principled positions. And now the other key challenge is that, for example, if we make a principled position of this nature, you mustn't ride on trying to, for example, play on tribal cards. We have had that serious challenge that if Tawani is speaking, they want to say, if I articulate a point and my colleagues respond, when I feel I can no longer defend, then I am quick to say, you are now attacking Midlands. Then this debate should end. But when I'm speaking in the board, it is Dewa who comes from Marsh Central, he comes from Midlands. We are scattered. We do not get in on the basis of geographical origins or tribal inclination. It's not like that. The issue is, it remains, there were serious operational issues which went wrong. We as the board, our role is to provide policy direction. And when we realized that the operational activities were no longer in sync with the policy direction of the custodians of the institution, we then stepped in. When we step in, we are there to put normals, not to disintegrate it. So the essence is, we are going towards the 31st of December, a date which we set collectively. Unfortunately, some might resist it, but it remains the fact that 31st of December, the contract is not being renewed. That has not been changed, and it's not going to change. So that's the essence. An AGM cannot resolve a contract of an employee. If, for example, the director of a political party is fired by the employing arm, they don't go to a rally in Mavuku to say, we are reinstating. No, that's they are simply losing it. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, Chair. I understand that these rich or fed colleagues from your secretariat are actually planning to have, what they are calling an AGM to pass a vote of no confidence in you. How are you going to prevent these colleagues from, having this meeting, given the fact that they are rich, they can bribe their way into that kind of
Okay, I'll take two. Then Tamuka, yes.
Yeah, mine is made to the youth. My understanding is that young people, the youth, are normally the vanguard of the values that are being preached. So I want to understand, what's the role of the youth committee? What are the young people actually saying in your committee, chair, youth chair? What is the actual view of young people? Because for me, those are the key pillars of any democratic movement.
Okay, Tamuka.
Yeah, I think I just have two issues. The first one, I think we tried to raise it. I know you are tempted, but then what I wanted is a clarity, because there are accusations that Dewama Finga, you were an employee fired by McDonald Lewanika, and when you came in back, your decisions, in as much as you are articulating quite well clearly, I mean, what you are saying, and I don't want to doubt that, but there are accusations that what you are actually doing is a vindictive agenda after having had a fallout, that you were not more than 2 years ago, you were within crisis as an employee under McDonald, you are fired, you emerge at an AGM highly contentious, in which McDonald and his fellow secretaries did not support you. You emerge as a chair, as the chairperson, from fired employee to chairperson, now to firing employer. So there are all these dynamics coming in. And then of course, I think what Zindi tried to raise, the issue of the AGM. Yes, we understand, the position which you've articulated is what that's quite clear. But I'm asking you from the basis of real politics. What if the AGA comes, the membership, if those people do, whether it's illegal or what, but those who are there, if they end up saying we don't want the director, what is, what end game do you see from this? Or it might result like in a total end. It's not like almost like another crumbling down of a major institution which has been playing some progressive role in terms of democracy and governance advocacy. So basically it's those issues, the issues of the conflict of interest from your side and from McDonald. I mean, that battle of say, how do you put it in a historical perspective and say clearly this is truly about governance procedures, no vendettas or any scars.
Okay, thank you. How do we stop the bogus AGM? Clearly at law it's illegal, and therefore this is where we stand, that any outcomes, deliberations from an illegal meeting are at law null and void. Okay? And this is the principle. Now, if you ask us, so if civil society simply decides to go the illegal route and subscribe to that, what do we do? Well, I think it's clear. We are saying we are bound by values of transparency and accountability and subscription to the rule of law and to good governance. So if it is a choice, we will address it when we come to that point. But we want to reiterate that this so-called special general meeting is illegal and is simply put together with the motivation of reversing a legitimate vote decision. And now, as Tavani had said, there are clear procedures. If there is an aggrieved employee, there are clear procedures that one should follow. If you choose to become political as an employee, then there is a serious problem. Now, you have asked Tamoka about myself having been employed 2 years ago and then having come to the AGM and having been elected the chairperson. Now, if you look at the decision that we have here, it is not my decision. It is not a personal decision of the chairperson. It is a board decision. You know, when I want to give you a history of what we did as a board, as a new board. When we came in as a new board at the beginning of this year, we said we must be guided by values of professionalism, transparency, and accountability, and insisted on that. And we said, because of this perception that there might be vendetta, which is being driven by politicized and partisan employees, we need to make sure that we deal only with facts. Okay? When we got in, we were aware of what was happening. We were aware that the organization was owing in various people in excess of $120,000. And most organizations have never had that kind of money. But one organization was in that kind of space. But we said, to be professional, we need proper documents to be presented, to be reviewed. And if this is confirmed or otherwise, we act when we get to that point. This is why we are acting on the basis of a professional audit report compiled by qualified chartered accountants of Zimbabwe, which is clear that the organization was put at serious risk by employees who failed in their duty to safeguard the best interests of the institution. And we are saying on that basis, so if you for a moment think that perhaps there's personal vendetta, this is why, as the board chairperson, I said, let the board decide. And if there are others who want, let them engage with the facts. Do not be blinded by that perception and refuse to look at the audit. Do not refuse to look at Zimbra. Why do you refuse to look at the gross negligence? Simply because you have a perception. The idea of objective people is to say, this is what we have heard. Now let's test on the ground. What does the audit report say? Okay? Even the funding partners, they must not simply say, this is our friend, and we stand by him no matter what, we sweep things under the carpet. They must say, let's interrogate that audit report. Mind you, for the record, this audit report, Nicodemously, was sent to be signed by a past chairperson when my board had commissioned it. And that is a gross irregularity which is criminal. But I said to the board, let's not talk criminality and involvement of the police, because they will shout vendetta. Let's deal with the facts. And this is why I said, facing gross offenses that are dismissible immediately, we said, let's not do that. let's be polite and soft and say we are not renewing. Simple. Okay? We are not firing anyone, we are simply not renewing on the basis of the wisdom of professionalism. So we are not talking vendetta, we are talking facts. Now, Tamuka, if you engage with the facts and still come to the same conclusion, then let's engage. But first, you must interrogate the facts that are on the table. And this is our challenge. And this is why we are coming to you and saying, colleagues, engage with the facts. Zimbabwe is a rumor country. People thrive on rumors. People thrive on rumor. We need to engage with facts. We need to say, yes, this is what we are saying. What are the facts? Okay? When I came in, I said, I was requested to come in. And you correctly said the secretariat was politicized and was campaigning against my coming in because they knew that I would stand on principle. When I left on principle. We sat down and we said, what are the issues? They did not have issues. But I said, on principle, I'll walk away for the interest of the institution. And I went back to London. Okay, do you understand? Now we have an employee who will not walk away, who believes that he is the alpha and omega of Crisis Coalition. That is unacceptable. We are saying we stand on principle. When I was there, I said I'm walking away. Colleagues, membership requested me. I am not heading an organization that is a member of Crisis, but as an individual, in my individual, they requested me to come standing on principle. And when I came back, I said, there is potential, yes, for conflict of interest. We need to address that. We had a constitutional reform process, and we said, we need to have structures. We need a grace period, 5 years between employees leaving the organization and coming back to the board. The same thing, 5 years between people from the board joining secretariat. This person that you're talking about was the board chairperson who appointed himself to be director of the coalition. Do you know that fact? And this is a fact. You understand? This is a fact. Now, what we also have, what is not
and these are things that
it's not unique
under the carpet when he was on start leave. And we are not telling the public that.
We are trying to be polite. We are the soft ones.
100% someone was not.
Now, can I explain? The challenge is, so we agreed. Now, you see, the current regional coordinator of the coalition, Joy Mabenge, was on the board and moved immediately into secretariat. You understand? So this must stop, and as a board we said we need to have a new constitution that clarifies these things. And we now have a new constitution for the organization that says you cannot move either way within 5 years. And it's in black and white because we believe in values and principles. And we signed onto it. I signed onto that. And this is why, as colleagues have been alluding, there are issues beyond what we are saying now.
Yeah.
Issues that are within the proper domain of the police force that we have not disclosed because we have the best interest of the institution that we want to advance. And this is why when you talk vendetta, when you talk of the things that were happening, when an employee is also the employer, and the problem that we have of malleable boards, a malleable management and leadership that is in the pocket of an employee. The moment you have an independent board that comes into play, then those people are not happy. They want to make sure that what they have, what they install is a stooge who rubber stamps their decisions. And this is the problem that we have. We cannot accept that. I cannot be a stooge, I cannot rubber stamp, I cannot be in someone's pocket. I have to be independent with my colleagues. This board must be independent and exercise proper oversight. But I will hand over to Douglas and then to Tawan to respond.
All right. Thank you, Fred, for posing that question. Before I respond, let me put it on record that I was unanimously elected by the members of the youth committee. So having said that, everything that I'm doing, it's not my own doing, but I have full backing of the youth committee. And I'm happy that this whole drama is happening because this is the time for us as young people to prove that regardless of our economic vulnerability, but we can still stand on principles and values of transparency and accountability. I know there are some people that will say young people, they can easily be influenced by money and all that. And for sure, that's it's also happening within our community. We can't prevent some people of loose moral ground to be swayed by parcels of few dollars or some even beer, you know, those kind of little things, they are happening. But I would like to proudly say that what I'm doing and what I'm standing for, there's a full backing of the youth committee. Right now I can see quite a number of faces from the youth committee, which shows that they are fully behind us, and this is the time also to clean the house. For a very long time we have been sidelined as young people, but without even benefiting anything. Those are the big guys who will still benefit and they will continue benefiting, but this is the time for us to dislodge that cabal that has been referred to. Let me close by saying that the Bible, which I strongly believe in, says that let no man defy the days of thy youth, but be an example in purity and in perfection. So this is the time for us to stand by what is pure. And thank you so much.
Thank you. In closing now, colleagues, do you have closing remarks? Anything?
Just that, again, just say that as the board, we value transparency and accountability, and we stand by that. And we value constitutionalism in the organization. Thank you.
Thank you. We maintain the issue when the music is over, the dancing must stop.
Comrades, thank you so much. We will distribute a few of the statements, and then we will also ask media to email out our statement. Thank you so much for coming.